Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor-Winter, and I am the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent, non-commercial podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. Europe is at war, not just since February 2022, but actually since 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea. That incident triggered a reaction in the former European Commission under President Juncker. It was decided to establish a defense fund to strengthen European defense industry and military capacities. We all know what happened later on, and as such, establishing the fund is almost prophetical. Calls are up this autumn for this funding scheme, and hence, I considered it a good idea to record an authoritative The Grant introduction to the funding scheme to help everybody that are working with proposals for these calls at this moment. I invited expert on the program Margherita Volpe, Research and Innovation Consultant, Security and Space Knowledge Area Leader at Zabala Innovation Consulting, into the virtual podcast studio to take us all through the program. The episode is divided into two. In the first part, we cover the political and strategic background of the funding scheme and the structure of the program, including types of funding, content categories, typical project activities, and call round frequency. Please enjoy. Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today we will have another introduction to another funding scheme, and it's a big animal to chew down. All these different funding schemes. The Horizon Europe, of course, that's where it started. And I continued into Erasmus Plus, ERC, and now, because I pick things up on LinkedIn and the flow there, we will have a talk about security today and defense. I have a guest, as I always have these days. It's very nice. And before I say anything else, Margherita, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
The pleasure's all mine. And Margherita, before I do anything else, can you just present yourself shortly, who you are and where you work?
Yes, of course. I'm Margherita Volpe. I work in Zabala Innovation in the office of Brussels. Zabala Innovation is a consultancy company that since more than 35 years is specialized in research and innovation strategies, and in particular in the access to research and innovation funding support. So myself, I'm mostly working on European funding programs, and I'm specialized in security, so civil security, defense, and space-related programs. I've been working in the domain of funding programs since more than 10 years now, and I'm very passionate about these kind of programs and opportunities, especially because they are always changing. It's always an interesting challenge to get to know them, and there is and they offer us as a consultants the possibility to work with very interesting people with very innovative ideas, and the domain of security and defense is not a niche. Actually, is really cross-cutting in several other sectors. So my goal is a little bit to spread this idea that there are parts or aspects of innovation and security related innovation everywhere in every sector that needs to be considered.
Mhm.
But today we're especially focusing on what it is specifically dedicated to defense
Yeah,
innovation.
yeah, we will introduce the European Defence Fund, and you will be the guest to give the grand authoritative update and introduction to that program. So congratulations, you get that feather in your head. So you're I always ask my guests on which sort of where on which leg they have the weight in the experience. So you've been a consultant throughout the years in your career, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah, grants
actually, yes.
consultant.
Yes, always. I started in this domain in working in Italy more than 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. It was my very first job. I was very passionate about this kind of activities and projects. I started with smaller tender, and then I grew up learning on the job everything that concerned Horizon 2020 first, DG specific grant programs, for example, about critical infrastructure protection and civil security, and little by little developed my expertise more in the space, defense sector, and nowadays defense is having quite an hype, and I'm very eager to work with more and more companies in this kind of topics. Again, defense is not only for ammunition or traditional things, but it is also about materials or about energy consumption for military purposes. So there is really a lot to work on and to discover inside this kind of specific
Yeah,
programs.
before we it's because it's of course it's a highly relevant funding scheme these days. We'll get back to that shortly. But as for you, I was saying, so I've been working as a grants consultant for combined 5 years, and it killed me. So I have a certain admiration for people who manages to stick in the sector and who actually likes it, because I didn't. It killed me. That's why I'm not doing it anymore. But it's I know a lot about it because I insisted for many years, right? So I know a lot about the conditions and how this is, and this is why I admire you all a lot, and this is why I have made a specific corner in the grant called the Consultants Corner to discuss, like specifically business models and conditions for the grants consultancy sector, because it's a shadow sector. So it's a
and the challenges that comes with our job, the long hours, as well as the need to always learn something new, because every project is a new challenge. So I totally agree that it is
yeah.
not an easy job, but I'm still very passionate about it.
Excellent. For new listeners, if you check my back catalog, I have a lot of content already on conditions for consultants, but also digging into business models, different companies. So you can check that out on the grant.eu. Now, enough of the self promotion here. Now you get a chance for the promotion of Zabala. Can you shortly present the company?
In a consultancy company specialized in supporting companies, SMEs, and also research organization in accessing funding programs. In particular, in my case, I'm specialized in European funding programs, but the company per se works also on national funding programs in Spain and France in particular, and also on tax credit in France and Spain as well. Within the European funding domain, we have achieved in the latest programs, so especially in Horizon Europe, a 35% success rate, which we are very proud of. And we are working to support any kind of application with people specialized in different sectors. The company has started with a core focus on energy and environment, but along the years has evolved with people specialized in several different sectors. By now we have 12 knowledge area, among which also the security, defense and space, one of which I am the knowledge area leader. In this unit, We are working on several different programs, of course, Cluster 3 of Horizon Europe dedicated to civil security, but we are also working on the European Defence Fund, which will be the object of today's chat, and as well as space-related funding opportunities, Internal Security Fund that is dedicated to police forces. So we cover many aspects and of this complex domain, and very articulated one.
So the thing is with the within this special sector of grants consultancy, when you have smaller companies, they have to narrow in and only cover a few topics for what you have of capacities, or they have to be really good in shifting and digging into different areas, and there's a certain constraint when you're not so many people, and this is the difference and advantage that big grants consultancy companies have. Start to be able to develop a lot of things behind the curtain, right? So you develop. I know that you have developed, for instance, that's a database of this Kalia thing,
Kaila.
The P&O had a similar thing. You would have the possibility to create all sorts of back office things that you can use and sell for the administrative part of project and so on and so forth, which is difficult when you're a small organization, right? So that's the advantage that these large grants consultancies as Zabala has, and Zabala was and is the largest competitor to P&O. P&O keeps growing, but it's I think you keep running after each other like this, right?
Yes, indeed. The company started as a Zabala started as a family company, so as a small company with really the effort of people that were very committed to realize quality work, and this spirit has remained. Although by now we are 450 people, so exactly we are growing a lot. We are trying to have people highly specialized. Several of my colleagues have a PhD or are highly specialized in a specific sector. So we really invest on quality and on offering a large set of services. As you were mentioning, we have a dedicated platform that allows to investigate funding opportunities in different throughout a different funding scheme, as well as to have intelligence about a previous project funded, innovators in a certain sector, and so on.
No, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Margherita, European Defence Fund.
Yes.
Let's dig into it. Fly in. So, from I did a small desktop yesterday, because this is actually not related to what has happened in Europe the last year and a couple of months, right? This is something that happened, but is actually related to Russia and related to what happened in 2014, right?
Yes.
So it's correct that because of what happened in 2014 with Crimea, then the former Commission and Commissioner President Juncker, he initiated the fund, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, there was this cornerstone State of the Union speech in which President Juncker called for for strengthening our efforts in the defense sector, our shared effort and common work, or common intentions towards strengthening defense activities, and to define a European Defence Fund. From that moment in 2016, from this State of the Union speech, several things happened. There were preparatory programs that anticipated the European Defence Fund, and then eventually in 2021, the first call for a proposal of the European Defence Fund was launched. But before, there were, as I mentioned, two preparatory programs that prepared and anticipated the work that we are doing now to experiment the type of format that the European Commission would like to have to support defense activities. The first one was 2017-2019. I was the preparatory action on defense research, the so-called PADR. So 90 millions were allocated to start to understand how to finance defense activities. Then there was a second program called European Defense Industrial Development Program, and it had 500 millions allocated. And then we come to the 2021-27 period, in which we have approximately 8 billion allocated to the European Defense Fund. What it is quite relevant is that this is differently from Horizon Europe, a program that is organized in annual work programs. So every year we have a different work program, and typically there is no biannual anticipation of the topics like we have in Horizon Europe. Here is something different, and of course the topics might get adapted according to what it is happening in the reality.
We'll get back to that, but actually the seriousness and the dark clouds, the seriously dark clouds hanging over our continent, has sort of made it more and more relevant to strengthening this funding scheme, right? Because the Europe we do not have a solid military axis or bloc. There's a collaboration. We have on the political level, right? So you have a collaboration between the member states that has agreed to joining such a thing, and they have sort of a collaboration of sending out sort of a fast-moving expedition military unit and so on, but it has nothing to do with the capacity of NATO, and it should not be in competition with NATO. It was, even though France probably would like that in the beginning, that's not the case here. Yeah, but still, the European Union, the political decisions around this is a realization that we can never stand on our own legs in relation to the America, but at least we can try. Yeah, at least we can try to make an effort and say, look, we know that you throw a lot of money into this, our dear Americans, but at least we try in our end to move forward together on the continent, right? To at least have some sort of solidity and build up our capacities and being able to facing a new reality in our surroundings here. So that's the back curtain of everything here, right?
Yes, and of course the Commission has an intention, and the European Union has an intention and an interest to foster collaboration among European countries and the companies that are in the European countries towards defense, not only to be autonomous, which is one of the key objectives and principles, but also to strengthen our competitiveness against other players that are, of course, very strongly established in other continents. The idea is that we should have our autonomy, reduce the fragmentation that we had in the European market for defense products and solutions, and be capable of working collaboratively cross-border among at least our companies. And the European Defence Fund in some ways also fostering the creation of and the identification of common requirements among member states. And this is part of the development actions, and we will speak about them later on.
But this is also, Margherita, it's also a matter of getting the sector out of the worm pit, right? Because this is how it's been seen until recently, that this is something ugly, something that we don't want to touch,
Yes.
Munitions, weapons, it's been viewed upon like for good reasons, for many years, like the very dirty sector. But the tide is shifting, realizing that we indeed need to gather our strength, so to say, around this sector, give it the attention it needs, because we need them.
Of course, and there is a lot that has been done in the civil sector that can be transferred to the defense one. And again, I think that the Commission is trying also to make us see that defense is not only about ammunition, but is also about keeping the soldiers with the latest, for example, dress and suits that can
outfits.
help them. Outfits, thank you for the word, that can help them to work appropriately in very complex and difficult environments, as well as energy or solution that can allow the realization of a camp on the field, and so on. So there is a lot to work on. We cannot be completely dependent to solutions that are coming from third countries. We need to be also autonomous in the development of these kind of solutions, also in my view, because we have soldiers around the world, and we want to offer them solutions that can help them in their work.
Yeah, so it's about strengthening and gathering the sector, getting a force behind it. And say, look, we're behind you. We give you money now to develop and make you, because this is the war in Ukraine has shown everybody. We already knew that this is where things are moving, but the war in Ukraine has shown us that technology is king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
It's new technologies. They're going to win that war. Together with efforts, right? But it's going to play a very vital part in whatever happens in armed conflicts in the years to come. No.
And we cannot ignore the developments that the technologies have done, just because defense is, as you mentioned before, a sector that is less typically affected. No, is not the perfect word, but let's say is not the typical target of research and innovation.
Yeah.
But the research and innovation needs to help also the defense sector, because we are facing new challenges, like, for example, CBRNA, so chemical, biological, radiological risks. And soldiers are facing these kind of risks. So we needed to bring the best technologies developed in the civil sectors also at disposal to the defense one. Yeah. As well as digitalization, of course, the power of artificial intelligence, remote controls, and IoT, and so on. Of course, the Commission, there is a common understanding that to change the defense sector, it is a much longer work than the civil sector. So I think that this funding program is an attempt to push the introduction of research results, also in a sector that has been typically considered more static and less open to change and innovation.
It's also an expensive sector.
It's also an expensive sector, absolutely, because the challenges are quite big that the soldier faces, and it's not exactly. Imagine the case of chemical and biological risk is not that the soldier can have a full lab in place. They have to bring on the field whatever they can, a small transportable lab based on which they can analyze samples of materials. So it is challenging, and maybe there are shortage of energy, maybe there are shortage of people, of course, specialists, and so on. So there are very complex, not to mention the fact that there might be explosions going on close to the soldiers.
War. You need flexibility. You need to move fast. You need to change conditions continuously. You need the people die around you. You might be hurt. Exactly. All this stuff.
Again, to move the things quickly, to protect the people that are there to do the job. So is a really complex sector, and where this is expensive to find the right solution for them.
It's all very interesting, but we have to get down to very concrete, tangible, and concrete structure of this program and how this works. Because this program will introduce everybody to the funding scheme. So there's a reference. This is a reference episode where you can listen to this and find out. So how do I approach this program if this is a research team's if you want to do this or company. So let's start out with the structure of the funding scheme. Can you open that up for us? So, what types of funding is it? Is it grants? Is it do you what to say? Do you fund yourself funding rate, or is it what kind of, and what's the typical project activities and so on? So
okay, so we are speaking about grants. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the funding rate is different depending on the type of activities, but so it's not as straightforward as it might be in Horizon Europe, where we have 100% or 70% funding rate in the majority of the cases. Here is a little bit more complex, but we are still speaking about a grant. So this means that our money that the Commission is giving to selected projects for implementing them, and not asking anything back in return in terms of money. Mm-hmm. So this is a grant scheme. What I was mentioning before is that the program is open for 7 years, so from 2021 to 2027. But it is organized in annual work programs, meaning that each year around March there is the publication of the call topics. So the topics that will be object of call for proposals during the year. Then typically there is an opening for presenting the proposal in June, and the final deadline is typically in November. So this is the flow. Mm-hmm. And exactly in the moment in which the calls are for 1 year are published, the Commission starts the work for defining the next year work program. And this is a long work because it needs to be agreed with the member states, receive the inputs of the member state, consider several different other programs like the Permanent Structure Cooperation PESCO program, synergy with other programs of the European Commission, and so on. So there is a lot of work that goes beyond the realization of these annual work programs. What it is interesting is that to know for everybody is that the approach of the European Defence Fund along the 7 year was to start small and grow along the years. So, for example, from last year, there were about 900 million allocated, and this year, in the 2023 work program, we are having 1.2 billion, mm-hmm. So almost a 30% increase. And the idea is that the trend, and the anticipation is that the trend will continue to grow progressively year by year. If we go a little bit more into the details of what it is inside, well, the basic thing to know is that there are research actions, so something that is less mature. So we are speaking about activity related to the generation of knowledge, integration of knowledge, activity of design of new prototypes, mm-hmm. and development actions, where you can get to prototyping, testing, qualification, certification, and increasing the efficiency of the production of a certain solution. As you can see, there is a sort of parallel respect to Horizon Europe, mm-hmm. where we have research and innovation action and innovation action. In the case of the European Defence Fund, we call them research action and development actions. Mm-hmm. Apart from this distinction, there is another one. There is another relevant one, that is the fact that there are thematic topics. Yeah. So something dedicated to a specific area, for example, underwater warfare or sensors, cyber things, space, mm-hmm. digital transformation, and so on. So these are thematic, and then there are bottom-up calls that are dedicated to, for example, the collaboration between SMEs and research organizations for the development of disruptive solutions. So they are more open and general, although they give some indication of preferred or interesting technologies, but these are more open.
But how many areas do you have? Are they divided into sub-work programs like in Horizon like this, or how does that work?
No, actually the structure is organized in topic. This year we have 34 topics, and what is the calls are what I was mentioning before: research action, development action, and bottom-up activities. Then there is a subdivision, but this is
there are always little asterisks in the whatever program.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's like typical project activities?
What are the typical project activities?
So it goes all the way like in Horizon, from research, basic research to demonstration pilot projects. Or
there is a inside the Horizon, the European Defence Fund. There are a lot of activities that can be considered, and they are really classified. So we are speaking about generating knowledge. We are speaking about integrating knowledge, studies, design, system prototyping, testing, qualification, certification, and increasing efficiency in the life cycle of the production of a solution. Depending on the type of topic, development action or research action, certain activities are accepted, are foreseen, and other are not. So in research action that is less mature development, we are getting from generation of knowledge to design activities. These are the activities that are eligible. And then for when it comes to development action, instead we are starting at a higher TRL, let's say. So from the integration of knowledge to study, design, prototyping, up to the certification and optimization of the efficiencies of the production activities. So it is very large, the spectrum of activities that are foreseen, but the topics, differently from Horizon Europe, specify exactly what it is eligible or not eligible inside your proposal. So reading well the topic becomes absolutely key in order to be sure to really be inside of the eligibility spectrum. It's not only a matter of justifying TRL with a short description, but really to allocate one more package per each, one or more package per each type of activities among the categories that I have mentioned before. And if I may go a step ahead, this corresponds also to the funding rate, because depending on the nature of the activity, the ones that I was mentioning before, there is a different funding rate.
Yeah.
So the funding rate is different, can be different per work package. So the final funding rate is determined by the type of activity that you have inside the project.
What's the logic behind that?
The logic beyond that is very similar to the one of Horizon. Like some activities are more potentially profitable for organizations.
Okay. Yeah. So what is the lowest? Now we're moving a little bit.
The lowest is actually quite low, because in prototyping we are having the 20% of funding rate, whereas the highest funding rate should be the 90% of studies. Of course, this concerns the development actions. For research actions, all the activities are funded at 100% because we consider that they are more far from the market, so less profitable, and everything that is a research action is funded at 100%. When it comes to development action, so things that are more close to the market, each type of activity has a different funding rate. But luckily enough, and to make the things even simpler, to be ironic, there is a bonus system based on which you can increase the funding rate of each type of activity. So this type of bonus depends on the fact of the project being part of the PESCO structure, so the permanent structure cooperation, or the more easily, the type of partners that you have. So if you have mid-caps involved and they have a certain level of eligible costs, then you have a bonus of 10% for each activity, each type of activity. If you have SMEs, you have another kind of bonus. If the SMEs are cross-border, you have another kind of bonus. So again, reading the topic is key, and defining very well the consortium structure is another key thing in order to maximize the funding rate.
Yeah. So it's reflecting the market. This is a highly profitable market, right?
When you come to have, the member state.
The closer you are to the end of the line, so to say, commercialization, the less you get. Much less you get, because they earn so much money when they come out.
Yes, and I consider that for the development actions, so those more close to the market, you need to prove to have at least 2 member states endorsing your project, meaning that you have at least 2 buyers, prospective buyers that have agreed on the requirements of your project, so they are interested in acquiring it in perspective. And when you get a state that is willing,
maybe they should introduce that to Russian Europe. That's a Russian Europe on speed. No, but anyways, if you have this kind of this is of course, if you have this kind of commitment on the other side, it's then you have. Are you sure? Then you're sure that the results are being used. I've just been running episodes on results not being used. It's a very old problem.
In this sector you have only, let's say, 27 buyers. So securing 2 of them is quite a potential challenge for some organization. And of course, the market is not so wide, so you cannot redirect the product to someone else. And the other rationale behind is that we should get to harmonize defense capability requirements, meaning that there is also a sort of push towards the member states to agree on some common requirements. And to support one or the other project.
Yeah, because here we're also talking about ethics, right? So you don't want to create. It's not in the charter of the European Union to be heavy munitions and exporter. You understand? You know, if we start to build up a huge defense sector, which can also be used in conflicts around the globe, right? Then of course there's an ethical issue there that
I think that in part the Commission is absolutely transmitting the general values that it has also through this program, because there are, for example, call for proposal dedicated to greener fuels also for the defense sector. So the principles of reducing the impacts on the environment that are driving the Green Deal are also somehow popping out also here in the European Defence Fund. Then, of course, Europe is based on very strong ethical principles. So will not finance.
It's a difficult task it's a difficult square to fit into a circle, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you cannot fully avoid that some of the stuff that's being developed will be used outside Europe in other conflicts. What do you want to do about that? You know, it's
a complex situation.
Anything else about the structure of the program before we dig into a target group and how to apply and so on? Because in the how to apply, we're going to cover proposal types, number of partners, funding, all this.
Well, I would like to mention a little bit the categories, just of the thematic areas. So to give a little bit of flavor of what it is inside this work program.
Yeah.
So inside each category, there might be one or more topic of research or development type, but the category that are stable. So you will find these categories along all the annual work programs. So we have defense, medical response, chemical, biological, and radiological, and nuclear. defense. So here we are speaking about CBRNA and health-related aspects of defense, information superiority, so tactical information, for example, sensors, which might also help, for example, the grid that is installed in a camp field. Cyber aspects concerning, for example, cyber situational awareness, space, so threat surveillance based on satellite images, for example. Digital transformation, so here it is quite a peculiar aspect category this year, but imagine that everything that deals with hardware and software change can appear here depending on the priority of the year. Materials and components, this is something that I am quite fascinated about, because it's about the materials of that the soldiers will be wearing or using on site. Energy and environment, as I was mentioning, air combat, air and missile defense, ground combat, force protection and mobility, naval combat, underwater warfare, and then we have the cross-cutting, so the bottom-up topics. So as you might see, it is, as the audience also might appreciate, there is not only ammunition and ground combat or combat in general, which is absolutely present and is absolutely there, but there is also a lot of things that surround the defense world that make it possible for the people to work. So energy, health, sensors, digital and intelligence information, and so on. And this is also the reason why the Commission is stressing a lot the fact that it is encouraging the transformation, that the application of civil research and innovation results to the defense sector, because probably in terms of energy and environment, there are more advanced solutions developed in the civil sector, which can be adapted to the defense one.
It makes sense. Yeah.
And then there are the three thematic calls. So the first one is dedicated to non-thematic research action targeting disruptive technology for defense. Imagine something like an AC program, so something open and looking for really disruptive solutions, a game-changing solution. Then there is a non-thematic research action for collaboration between SME and research organizations. So it's strictly targeting this type of collaboration, again, open in terms of subject matter, but strictly targeting this kind of collaboration. And then finally, a non-thematic development action by SMEs. Here we are only targeting SMEs as participants, and as I would say, similar to a AC accelerator, so something for small and medium enterprises that wants to develop something very close to the market and ready to be deployed.
Yeah. Margherita, is the program taking into consideration the fact that you have a lot of strong players outside Europe?
Yes.
Israel is of course part of, but America, China.
Yes.
So you have some. Probably we don't want to collaborate too much with China on this, right? But at least America. Is that written into the program? That is, do you have this kind of course where it's specifically like you have in Horizon, America, USA can be? How is that?
No, it is considered in a strictly exclusive way.
Okay.
Meaning that one of the core eligibility condition is that the consortia needs to include organizations strictly based in Europe.
Okay.
So EU27 plus Norway. And also the infrastructure and the type of, and the activities and the subcontractors needs to be located in Europe and Norway. So the additional condition is that also the ownership of these companies and these organizations that are applied for the Defense Fund should not be in third countries. So we are speaking about companies that are based and owned by that are based in Europe and owned by other European organizations. Okay. So this is in line with the promotion of autonomy, competitiveness of the European defense market, and so on, as well as the fact of becoming self-reliant on our developments in defense.
What about the UK? No.
Excluded.
Yeah. No, but it's an interesting political decision, right? But it's security and defense. So, yeah.
Well, yes, I'm appreciating every day the difficulties that the Brexit has caused. So for the defense sector and for the type of complexity that this sector is facing, I'm operatively happy that they made this cross-cutting decision to set the program like this. It is crystal clear. You have to be in Europe. You have to be owned by Europe. You have to do your activities in Europe, plus Norway.
It makes it easy as a grants consultant, naturally. Yeah, you don't have all kind of slippery back doors, you know.
Exactly. I mean, in respect to other programs, here there are no specific conditions. I can only reply, no, not eligible.
It's also easy for our dear listeners to understand.
And in terms of eligibility, just as we are mentioning it,
wait a little bit with that.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's when I talk about these funding schemes, it's easy to slide around the different elements. But I think if we just I think for the structure and how they build up, so the structure and the frame of the program, I think it's pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
Is there? I have put here in the rundown the classic European Defence Fund project. Is there a sort of a quintessential sort of?
I would say no. That there is not a classic European Defence Fund project. Actually, in 2021, there were projects that were having a very different kind of budget. So as you can imagine, correspondingly, there were very different kind of consortia defined, really different kind of activities and really different kind of projects implemented. What it is helpful is that the topic description indicates exactly what type of activities are expected, as I was mentioning before, studies, prototyping. So it guides a little bit more the applicant. It's not as detailed as a tender for those that are more familiar with this kind of funding opportunities, but it is more clear and more detailed respected to a topic in Horizon Euro that is typically more open. Here, the Commission is telling you exactly what type of activities can be included inside the project and what are also some technical requirements that you need to comply with. So there is no typical project. There are projects that range from 3-4 millions up to 100 million. This was the spectrum that was funded in 2021, just to give you an example. And we have topics that are very wide, so they are open. So the open topics that I was mentioning before that are targeting to finance several different projects, and others that are targeting to finance only 1, 2, or up to 4 projects. So I would say that the range goes from 1 to 4 and then several project funding.
All right. Thanks. Let's move on. I have put here, I don't know if it's relevant actually to take it as a separate target group stakeholders. Should we move directly on to how to apply? Because then we might touch on this anyways.
In terms of, group and stakeholder, I can.
And here I will be fading out of the first part of this introduction to the European Defence Fund. The second part of this double episode will be released next Monday. Here, Margherita and I will continue to uncover the EDF program. There, we will dig into target group stakeholders, how to apply, evaluation regime, what happens when funding is received, and, of course, do's and don'ts. Look forward to that. See you then.